most important parts about buying real estate is the closing, right? Unless you get to the closing table, you do not have any control of that asset or the proceeds from that asset. So we brought on one of the top attorneys in the region, Melissa Delana of Delana Law, to talk about what is holding back so many closings. Melissa, welcome back.
Thanks, Emilio. Great to be here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. So closing delays are becoming a very common problem that we are seeing in our practice. And we've talked before that Rhode Island purchase and sales agreements don't have that magic language, time is of the essence. You have to sort of remember or revisit that briefly, because without time is of the essence, our closing dates in Rhode Island are just strictly target dates. So if you know that you're supposed to have a closing on December 15th, well, we may end up needing to push it back because of X, Y, or Z reason. Now, most of the time, as Emilio, I'm sure you can speak to, it would be buyer-borne delays. But what if the seller needs to delay for some reason? And I think that that is a place where we are seeing, especially with a difficult rate environment, right? The rates are not selling off and they're going down. So we're in a situation where we need for these buyers to understand closings could be delayed and there could be costs associated with the closing delay. I don't know about you, but I'm seeing transactions being simultaneously connected more and more. So if you're representing a seller and they're buying something in state or out of state, it doesn't matter, and their subsequent purchase gets delayed for some reason, now what? Now they're going to have to say, well, sorry, buyer of my house on Main Street, I need to delay this closing because I can't be displaced or homeless. So now if they decide they're just going to delay that closing, there are certain other alternatives that could be explored. But if they just say, I'm not doing it, I don't want to deal with any of those alternatives. This is my house. It's a closing. That's a target closing date. I'm not going to perform because I'm just simply not ready as the seller. And we are seeing more and more of that. And it could be title related issues, could be related issues to closings being delayed, could be issues that come up as a result of probate administration matters. So there's so many topics that we could kind of spider off into. And I don't know if you're seeing any of this because we're seeing a lot of it. One of the best measures that we can counsel our client towards is a contingency plan. If you're buying and the closing gets delayed, what is your contingency plan? You know, can the movers be delayed? Do you have to be out of your apartment that you've been renting? If you're selling and this transaction gets delayed on the buyer side, or if a simultaneous transaction that you're involved with gets delayed, how are you going to manage this? What's your contingency plan? And I think, Emilio, developing that conversation early and upfront is one of the things that helps to keep a smoother transaction. But so often, especially right now, I'm seeing buyers and sellers that it's just bam, bam, bam. They think everything's going to go like clockwork. And the minute you have a little wrinkle or a speed bump, it's like all hell broke loose. It's not life or death. I mean, we can figure this out. There's an opportunity to proceed with a rent back or a rent forward, where, you know, that may be a situation where the closing has to take place, but one of the parties is going to have possession. There are certainly opportunities for extensions, and then maybe the party that has caused the delay covers the costs associated with it, but that's not guaranteed. And I think that that's, again, a really important conversation to have, because if a buyer finds out, hey, the seller's deal fell through, seller was selling, right? You've got a simultaneous transaction. Now they're selling to me. Their deal fell through. They're not ready to close on December 15th as we planned. They're going to need to move it to January 15th. That can not only displace me, but have a substantial impact on my interest rate and my respective personal costs. So knowing how we're going to negotiate this, because the seller's not obligated to cover those buyer's costs, which I think is such an important conversation. And conversely, if the buyer is delaying, the seller has to pay a second month mortgage, right? You just mentioned they may have a mortgage because they already moved. They're feeling out of pocket. They don't want to have to do that. Well, sorry, the buyer's not obligated to give you that money. It's a nice to have. You can certainly try to negotiate it, but it is in no case expected that the parties are going to compensate each other for extension unless there's a time is of the essence, which is not required.